Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to take a step back and look at creating a game level select control system. What we're doing is really creating a map which will give you more of an idea in terms of the story. So for example, and I don't have the full map here, but you start at the home castle where some dispute, something happened, and then you need to kind of wind your way through and complete the stages to get to the end goal, which is further up in the map itself. So what we're going to be creating is a level select where you start at your home castle, you move along the path, and then you reach this level 1 or stage 1. And this has a collider on it which you can't move through. So you can't just go and complete, the stage up here. You have to complete this in order to unlock it. And then when it's unlocked, you can then go on to complete stage 2. And then when it's unlocked, the collider will, and so on. So that's what we're going to be working on. Okay, so the assets that we're using, or that I used in that little map scene that you saw, is if you go to itch.io and then search for Pipoya, these are the assets here. You can click on the link here, which brings you to some of the other ones that are created by Pipoya as well. Currently, the only one that we need really is this free world tile set, which has, you can see there, that's the castle that I had. And then there's also other castles that you can use in the scene itself. And then there are these tiles for the scene, for the grass, the forest, the mountains, and so on. So once you download these, so I have them downloaded already. So same as before, you would click on them. You can choose to donate money for the creator. It's not necessarily required though. And then when you unzip these, you will get so this is the zip file. When they're unzipped, it will give you this, which one is it? It's this world tile set here. So in the world tile set, the tiles that we want are, so I'm going to do the 32 by 32, and then we want this map one, so the Pipo map. Oh, that's not what I want to drag it to, so I want to go into my art. And, oh, sorry, the other thing as well, I'm using a different, so one of the things that often you should do, and because I already have this set up in the other game, I don't want to go and start deleting and trying to set it up where I have the right things deleted, because again, as happened previously, when you start trying to delete scripts and things like that, you start to get null exceptions, because it's hard to kind of remember where exactly everything is linked. So typically when you're playing around with scripts and so on, so usually what I would have done was set that scene up in this game. So I have a second game essentially created where I go around and I play with the scripts. That way, if you play around with the scripts and you mess up the game, this isn't the actual game. So you don't want to be, so typically if you're playing with a number of scripts and you're deleting stuff and you're trying out new things, do it in a separate game file, and that way, if you mess it up, it's not going to mess up your entire game, right? So if you create these null exceptions that then you can't find, you don't want those there. So anyways, so I did it the opposite. I actually created it because I was playing around, and then I got lost in doing it, and then I completed it in the actual game, in the game that I was creating. So I'm just backtracking, and I'm going to do it here so you can kind of see how I go about doing it. So anyways, so create your Pipoya art folder, and I've already actually added that in. So we have this map, so I just dragged it over. And then similarly, we do want, I think I used, and the other one, I think I used these ones here. So there's a number of ways, and again, you don't necessarily have to use these ones specifically. I'm just going to select all of them. Oh, I have the wrong button selected. And then drag those over as well. So what you're going to be doing is creating a tile palette, the same as we did before. Again, first things first, we need to, so these are 16 pixels per unit. You can make it multiple. Let's go point, no filter, apply it. And then we want to go to sprite editor. And I believe these were sliced as 16 by 16. And it should work fine. Yeah. Now, one of the things that actually, I think that's perfect. So that works good. Yeah. So that's awesome. So then we'll apply that and let the sprites compile. Okay, so I also have, I also slice some of these other ones. And again, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide what you want to do. So I'm going to be using this map 01, which has this path-like or sand-like texture to it. And also the grass one, this one here that just has the grass and some darker grass that's in it. So those are the ones that I'm going to be using. Actually, I won't even need this one. I don't believe that the way I have the other one set up. Anyways, so as we did before, so our tile palette, we can create a new tile palette. So we create the new one, and then again, in terms of find your folders where you want to sort. So I have mine in my art folder, and I have, so remember in the art folder, so we have the tile map for pixel add. So I'm going to also create one for the Pipoya. And I'm just going to call it palette. I believe in the other game I had it as pixel add palette, not tile map, but that's fine. So and then we're going to select that as where we want this. So that's the one I'm going to save it in. And then as we did before, we just simply drag over the ones that we want. So we want the Pipoya map. So I'll drag that over, and that's going to go in, yeah, so in that folder there. So select folder. And again, I'll let this compile and set up. Okay, so now that you have your tile map set up or tile palette set up, unfortunately, I did not click the right folder because I have all of these in the art. I didn't put it in the palette folder, which is why, again, so it's fine. It's still, everything is fine. It's just now I've got all of these files in here, and if I try to find the other ones, but it still works. So I'm going to also drag over the path one that I'm going to be using, and let's just leave it in the same spot then. Did I drag the right one? I don't know if I did. Yeah, okay. And actually the other one we're not going to need, so I'm going to just leave it like that. So now that we have these in here, what we want to do is create our scene that is going to allow us to kind of move through the level. And then it's going to unlock this level. So to do that, again, you could start from scratch and just start a new scene and then kind of work from there. However, because a lot of these things we want, I'm just going to make sure I have this saved. And then I'm going to save as, and I'm going to save the scene as, let's just call it map scene. And we'll save that. So now that this is the map scene, this is the scene that we're going to be using. Now, again, there's a number of things that we don't want this as our scene. So similarly, we're not going to need the saw. We're not going to need the moving platforms. And I'm just going to delete some of the things, and then kind of you can pause when. Okay, so I got rid of a lot of the things that we don't need. You might want to leave music effects. I'm not sure if we're going to use them. The virtual camera, our permanent stats, we definitely need to leave, and this is where we're actually going to start our permanent stats from. The finish screen, actually, we don't need this here. And then the game over pause I'll leave here. And this is our, so this is our original kind of canvas, which has our game view canvas, or similar to it. Again, it's going to be slightly different because this is the older game that I was playing around with. And then what you're going to need to do is delete pretty much this whole area. So what you can do is just select a large area, go to the eraser, and then kind of go through and delete, and then go to the different layers that you're in, right? And then just delete them. Okay, so now that we have everything deleted, what we're going to do is now paint in our level. So first thing actually as well, we're not going to be using the script that the player currently has. So I'm just going to delete the script now. So the item collector script we don't need either actually, so we can delete that script. So let's remove it from this player. And we can remove, actually I'll leave the script. I think what I'll do is just go in and edit it because some of it is going to be the same. Anyway, so to paint the background, so if we go to our tile palette, It's fairly simple. So all we're really going to do is, so we'll go to our layers, and I didn't really change any of the layers. Actually, I can go to this background layer. I don't think I erased it because I was actually doing something else with the background to make it move. So anyways, I'll turn this on and erase it, and then okay, so I have that background erased, and we're just going to use it. So in our background then, we're going to just paint. So what we can do is select the grass layer. So that's going to be the background itself. So you could select all of this if you want. It's either or is fine. And then make sure we're in our background layer. And then we can use, so this is how I think I did it the first time, and we just painted each one on at a time. We can actually just say, click this, and it'll allow us to just paint on. So you can just drag, and why is it doing that? So click there, and then we can just drag, and that's our background. Right, so currently we have our background, and because we just saved from our scene 1, these are already set up. So this is my background layer, and then I'm actually, so our trap collision, I'm going to delete that layer, we don't need it. The edge layers we won't need either, so these all have colliders on them. I'm going to leave my foreground and the level bounds, which is our level boundary, and then I'm also going to create another 2D tile map, and I'm just going to call it mid. Put it there, and our default, let's put it in the, so I'm going to add another sorting layer, and we're going to call this mid. And you can drag these to organize them, so I want that in between them. So now we're going to have our background painted first, and then the midground. So now that we have our background, we can go to our midground, and we can just paint in a path, right? So, and I'm actually going to move my player. Actually, let's also paint in our castle. So in the midground, so we'll go to the midground, and again, we're going to start at our home castle. So let's use, doesn't matter which one, so whichever one you like. So we can use this one, and we can paint it in. So make sure we have our midground selected, and there we have our castle in there. And then again, your level is essentially going to start, so you might have it as, and depending on your story, where you want to start and so on. So this kind of, you're going to be moving through a path and unlocking levels as you go to reach, for example, the end goal, which is maybe the evil, wherever the evil wizard or dragon or whatever lives, right, wherever he lives. So currently, again, so if you want it sort of up a bit, so it's above that layer, you can do it this way. The level bounds I have in the, where is it? So it's in this, I could actually just move that to the foreground, or sorry, to the mid, and then my castle, you can, so sometimes this will paint above and behind it. So what you'd want to do is move it so that our castle is, no, that's not going to work like that. So we'd have to want that on a different level. Anyway, so that's fine. So you can play with those settings and get it to work the way you want. The goal is to, again, to get the path created. So what we're going to be doing then is in the midground, we're going to construct our path. So we're going to just use our normal tile here, and let's start making a path. So you're going to go up. Use this tool. So we're going to go over here, and then we're going to go up, and maybe over here, and then up, and so on. All right, so that's our path. There's no colliders on this. So what we want, though, we don't want our player to be able to move freely throughout this world, right? We want the player to actually have to move along the path and then unlock the boundaries. So in the foreground, so this is where we do have colliders on, we're going to paint the edges of these, right? So we can paint the edges of the path, and you can see there's a collider there. So now your player, once your player is inside here, is not going to be able to move outside of those colliders. So we can kind of continue to paint. I don't want to double there. So we'll just quickly paint in a scene. finish that side and that corner. And then to get the corners here, so you want to kind of use these, and I'm familiar with these now. So this is the one that, because you want the grass in the upper left corner. So that'll make that transition in terms of the corner. And then we can continue to paint. Now you'd want the grass in the lower corner there, and so on. Right, so anyway, so that's how you set up the grass layers themselves. So I'm going to just quickly finish this. And there you go. So currently we have colliders along here, but this area here is not a collider. So your player, what you'd want to do is get your player, so let's move the player so that it's somewhat centered on the map. And then I actually would, I think I'm going to change this from, so I'm going to just turn that collider off. Actually, we can remove the collider, we don't need it. And then I'm going to add a box collider instead. So add a box collider 2D, and currently this collider is going to be way too big, right? Because our level boundaries. So if we go back to our foreground where the collisions are, and then you want to sort of pick where are the colliders right now. So so currently we want our player collider to be a little bit, so really at the bottom of the player character would be fine. And then the top of the collider needs to be just slightly above or in the red there. So if we go back to the player collider, we can edit that collider. So we're going to edit the collider, and we're going to just shrink it so it's a little bit in the red. And then I think I said it was just a little bit below the character. And then this is also going to have to come in, but we can fix that in a second. So that sets up the collider in terms of the up-down. So if we just double check, right, make sure that, so again, so I want to be just around the red and just below the, so if we go back to my player, and yeah, so that should work fine. It's not going to collide with the edges. The other thing you can do, we can add slippery material so that the player doesn't, there's no friction there, allows it to move a little bit more easier along the path. And then you'd want to do the same thing for the up-down path here. So for the up-down path, we can again go to our foreground, and actually I'm going to move my player over a little bit more. So there, and now we can do the same thing. So you would look at the foreground and then match up. So here's the collider here, here's the collider here, and then match up so that your collider, your player collider is inside of these bounds here. Okay, so now that that's set up, we could, so what we're going to do is I'm going to just move my player back to where it would be starting at. And then you'd want to add in the level controls themselves. So to do that, what we can do is in the art, we can add, so we're going to add little circles. So we're going to right click in your art folders down here. So somewhere in the window. So we can right click and we're going to create a sprite, and then we're going to create a circle. And that's going to create a circle sprite. As we've done before, to get the circle into, so same as all the other game assets, we can drag it up in the hierarchy, and then it's going to add it. And again, we can't see it because it's in behind. So we can select it, and you can see that, so it's in the foreground. Currently, it's because it's painting, and this will be random, right? Sometimes it'll be fully in front, sometimes it'll be behind. So currently it's just behind. So one quick fix, I mean, we're going to be putting it approximately in the center here anyways where it shouldn't collide, but what you can do is simply make it as a 1, and then it's always going to be above, it will be above those other foreground objects. The other thing we can do with the circle, we can change the color. So if we want to make them blue, why didn't that change blue? Let's go back to the circle. So, oh, sorry, so click in the box so we can change it to a blue color. And then if you want it slightly transparent, this is the transparency one, A. So we can make it slightly transparent or not transparent at all. It's kind of your choice which one to do. And that sets up that part of it. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add a collider. So we're going to add a circle collider. And in that circle collider, we're going to edit it so that it is on the inside. And this is going to stop the player from, and it doesn't need to be really that big. So as the player moves, it's going to hit that collider and then it can't get past here, right? So it's not going to be able to move to that path and then get up the path. It's going to get stuck there. We also want to add another collider, and this time I will make a box collider, and this time it's going to be a trigger. And that's because when we turn off the circle collider, if you have it as a trigger and one as a non-trigger, because we're just calling the circle collider, sometimes it may know which one to get. So this way it will know we want circle collider to turn it off, and then you could go back down and the box collider will still be active because it definitely did not turn off. The other thing that we're going to be doing is editing the player script. So, and then with this, so to make copies of this so we can just duplicate it. So this you might call level 1. And then the second one we will call level 2. And let's move the second one. So level 2 might be part way up here, or it could be all the way up at the next corner, and then as you turn and so on. So I'll just put it here for now, that's fine. And to move the player, so I'm going to go to the player, and actually I was wrong a bit because we can't, well actually it's fine. I'm going to edit, so we're going to just take the player controller script, we're going to edit it. However, make sure you do not edit this script, right? Because this is a player controller script that is in your player or on your player in all of the other scenes. So if you edit this, then it's not going to work, right? Your player won't work in the future scenes because it's going to be going based on what we want to do. So I'm going to just leave that open for a second. And then we're going to add a component. We're going to add a new script. And we're going to call it map. Let's call it player map controller. So we're going to create and add it. Okay, so now that we have it open, we could just go back into this script here, and we could copy some of this down. So I'm actually going to just take all of this and copy it, and then just delete. So to save some time of going back and retyping a lot of this in, I'm just going to select the whole script. And so I'm just going to copy it. And I'm just going to paste it into here. So, and then we can start deleting. So we're not going to need any of these health, eye enumerators, the bounce right, the on collisions. So we can add in our other ones. So then we're going to get into our movements here. So we do, so we don't need these as grounded, the jump. Actually, we don't need any of this jump. And then we are going to want the move player, so we don't need the jump. We're not going to need to call if the player is hurt because the player is not going to be hurt. Now that I think of it, it may have been easier just to work through and retype it in, but that's fine. We don't need to call those anymore. You might want to leave it so that your game view canvas is active in here. So we'll leave that there. We don't need the so we still need our rigid body, we still need the animator, we still need to use the anim.setBool is running as false. Mind you, that doesn't need to be here because it should be set up in, so up here, I'm going to just delete and then, okay, so now that we have, so I have the things that we pretty much need for the most part. So we need our speed variable still. We need the rigid body, the animator, the move HD, so all of this is the same. And then same thing, you might want to be able to pause it, so that's our game over pause canvas. Similarly, we might want to still have the finish canvas there, and the sound effects manager, and then we want to get those components. So we want to get the rigid body, get the animator, get the sound effects. So same as our player script, and again, this might be slightly different from the one that we were working on in the other game, because again, the coding works in a variety of ways. It's mostly the same. It might be just slight differences in terms that I'm using. So for example, the game over canvas, I believe, is game over pause canvas in the other game. So anyway, so move HD equals input.get axis. So that's going to allow our character to move left and right. However, we do also want to be able to move vertically, right? So we're going to also create a move vertical distance equals input dot get axis, and this should be get axis raw, and then vertical. And then vertical is the same as the horizontal, in the sense that horizontal is left-right keys, the vertical is the up-down keys. So the Unity kind of knows which direction it is going in. And I'm going to also create a private float for the move vertical distance. And that's it. So then we identify what these are. And so down here then, so in the update, so the inputs are in the update. If our number of lives is less than 0, actually this one we don't need. So we only really need this one here. So if the game over canvas is active, so that's if we're paused, then we want timescale to be 0. If we're finished canvas or is active, so that's when you finish a level, the finished canvas is going to be active. We want timescale to be 0. Else, so if these are not active, then the timescale is 1. So we want to be able to set the time back to 1 when we come to the map layer. And then in the fixed update, we're going to move the player, and this is the same code, right? So if move HD is greater than 0, then we move the velocity and so on. And same as the, I'm going to actually just, so we can copy this because it's really the same code. So if, I don't know why that all went to the, and I have an error with one of these braces somewhere. I have an extra one, and it looks like this is it. Okay, so in our move horizontal, and then we also, now we're just going to say move, if moving in the vertical direction is greater than 0, then we want to move, the only difference here is we want to move up in the y direction. So rb.velocity.x, comma, and then we're moving move vertical direction times the speed. And you can flip the sprite to be facing left if going up and down, if going up or whatever, it's up to you. And then same with the bottom one, we want to do if move vertical direction. And again, don't get confused with when we were moving the enemies, because it was strictly in the code, we put it as a negative speed to move. So just backtracking, because we did the player way back at the beginning, and we just identified the move in the horizontal direction. So this takes into account, because it's an input, it knows that you're hitting the left. So it's going to go to the left. It knows that you're hitting right, so it's going to go right. So you don't need to have positive, negative speeds to make it go up, down, or left, right. And then similarly for this one, our rb.velocity.x, and then move speed. So move vertical distance times the speed. Else if move HD equals 0, or if our move vertical distance is 0, then we want to set our anim set bool to running as false. So we'll save that out. Okay, so I see kind of what, it took me a second there. So what's happening here is, so it's not working. I keep getting this, and this is, well, important in the sense that sometimes you got to make sure you're in the right spots where your coding is. So it's telling me this namespace can't contain members of fields and so on. What is happening is when I kind of click on this brace, that's my brace for the start of it. So when I kind of deleted some of the stuff, I have the wrong spot. So I want this, which is why this is showing up at the beginning. So I do want this in the, and I can actually take all of this. So I'm going to cut this, and I want it inside of our braces for the actual game itself. So I want that in the fixed update, and hopefully that fixes it. So that should be my brace for the beginning of this, yep. And this should be my brace for the beginning of my move player, and now this should work fine. So we'll save it. Okay, so don't forget to, you're going to have to set those canvases, so the pause, game over pause canvas screen. So drag that over, and then the other one I actually deleted. So we're not going to want to delete the finish screen, which is fine if you did. We can easily just go back. So let's save this. So as a quick kind of, so we can go back into scene 1, and we can take our finish. So make sure this is the one with the canvas. So copy it, and then we'll go back to our map scene and paste it. And then I'll just move it over into here. So let's open it up so that we can see the canvas, go back to our player. So let's look at the script, and we'll put that finish screen. So that's the canvas that we want to make sure it's not active. And now this should all work where we can play through. So, okay, so when we're playing, so now I can move. I was moving to the left and right. Maybe I just didn't, I hadn't clicked back on there. So we can move left and right. There was some spots where it felt like I was sticking. So you could fix that by adding that slippery layer. And again, you can see that the collider stops me from moving there. So just to double check to make sure we can move up, we can go to the level 1, turn the collider off. Just make sure that our collider isn't, and we can also move up, and then we would hit that collider there. Oh, I must have, so I still have gravity. So if I let go, it just falls, my player falls down. That's because we have gravity. So we don't want gravity to act on our player because we're able to move vertically and so on. So anyway, so that sets up the scene itself. And in the second part of this tutorial, we're going to look at how do we add the scripts to turn those colliders on and off and then level or load up the scenes. So that's it for now. In the second part, we will finish up the level select